Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, has just published this very post on his official Telegram channel. It's quite significant. This is just a part of it, but it's interesting because it concerns the fundamental issue of Kyiv's red line regarding territories. Zelensky writes, "We have different positions with Russia on territories." This absolutely needs to be understood and discussed openly. And I think it's worth noting here that the American side, acting as a mediator, will likely propose various steps to facilitate finding at least some degree of consensus. We will strive to do everything in our power to find very clear answers regarding security guarantees for all territories and the financial compensation for Ukraine. To rebuild Ukraine, we need to know the funding source, blah, blah, blah. Further on in the text, but the crucial point is that while we hold differing positions from the Russian Federation, the United States will also actively engage and propose steps. We'll propose various steps to find some sort of consensus. Friends, doesn't it seem to you that currently the president of Ukraine, well, let's call it the collective president of Ukraine, meaning the entire team of negotiators, is now, well, effectively taking a significant step back from their own self-created red line regarding territories. They are not merely passing the ball or making a polite gesture. Instead, they are completely surrendering all initiative, leaving it entirely to the discretion of the United States and the Russian Federation's negotiators, particularly when it comes to resolving the highly sensitive territorial question. This is a significant move that impacts future negotiations and the strategic positioning of all parties involved. Look, I understand there's Volodymyr Zelensky's position, there's the Ukrainian position, there's the position of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Defense, whoever you want. There is a firmly established position that the defense forces will not unilaterally withdraw from Donbass, a stance that is currently being articulated with utmost clarity and conviction. Podolyak, speaking to Le Monde, suggested that Russia might well need to take a similar approach to the situation as well, whether it's a theory, a specific boundary, or something else entirely. But from this very post, it's plainly evident that our stances on territorial matters differ significantly. However, the United States, mind you, is actually expected to put forth a variety of proposed measures. Not just supposed to, they will, to find at least some consensus. So, a consensus on territories. These aren't just mere words. We are currently observing a deliberate and earnest search for viable options and solutions, aiming for consensus. Friends, what took place this past Saturday and Sunday in Berlin certainly had its lasting consequences, leaving a significant impact. You have to understand that politicians such as Merz, Trump, and Zelensky are constantly working on two distinct fronts at the same time. They operate for both their domestic audience and their external audience, constantly striving to appeal to both. And this external audience, you see, this is exactly the background, the very foundation of what's happening, where there is a clear need to demonstrate flexibility. You can shout all you want here about our position, but with the United States, under the kind of pressure that's being applied, that won't fly. And why do I claim that Kyiv is now essentially conceding on this critical red line? Today, a comment from Lavrov emerged, which I'd characterize as remarkably unambiguous. It contains no hidden meanings at all. Any hidden meanings? Please just take a look at this short clip right now.
The underlying causes will erupt because no one heeded us. So now we need to remove these root causes. It's good that the Americans have understood this. They explicitly stated that NATO's presence is unacceptable. Furthermore, they unequivocally declared that territories historically inhabited by Russians for centuries must unequivocally revert to Russian control, and that the Russian language, Russian culture, and the rights of the canonical Ukrainian Orthodox Church must absolutely be restored. This also means...
All right, friends, that's really all there is to it. All that talk about the rights of the Russian canonical church is just nonsense, isn't it? It's about NATO and the territories. Lavrov says the Americans have agreed. The Americans have concurred. And now we receive a more elaborate clarification from Lavrov's deputy. Indeed, a few more illuminating details provided by Ryabkov. Now, let me just make this a little bit larger for you. Here's what Ryabkov writes. RIA Novosti reports this, quoting the deputy head of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Since 2022, the Donbass region, specifically the two republics within it, became an integral part of Russia following the referendums conducted there. That's regarding Donbass. Beyond that, a similar situation unfolded in the Zaporizhia and Kherson regions, making for a total of 4 such territorial entities. Dash, he continues, an integral part of Russia. And I'm not even talking about Crimea. That story is from 2014. So we are talking about 5 entities in total. And on this particular matter, we absolutely cannot afford to compromise because from our perspective, doing so would fundamentally. Just a moment, friends, let me quickly adjust my position. It would fundamentally revise a core aspect of our statehood firmly embedded in our constitution. So what exactly are we dealing with here? Lavrov states that the Americans have heard. So what exactly have they heard? These include the DPR, LPR, Zaporizhia, the Kherson region, and Crimea. So concerning Zaporizhia and the Kherson region, I do believe that he is specifically referring to the occupied territories when he brings up those areas. So now, what exactly did all this ultimately get exchanged for? Apparently, the Americans have adopted a certain position on this matter, which they seem to have traded for the whole issue of security guarantees. The publication Politico came out with a very interesting article today, which says that there is currently a window of opportunity for Ukraine to embrace a significantly progressive and robust proposal from the United States, specifically concerning security guarantees akin to NATO's Article 5 provisions. However, as Politico reports, the United States is not offering this on some indefinite or open-ended timeline. Instead, Ukraine must agree now, before Christmas, if it is to receive substantial security guarantees, potentially even with the added weight of ratification in the United States Congress. This is a critical, time-sensitive proposal. If Ukraine acts on this opportunity right now. So that's the full story. This inside information is also corroborated by Le Monde. The United States, and I quote, is quite confident that the Russian Federation will indeed accept the conditions concerning these security guarantees. The Russian Federation will indeed accept them. In other words, this is acceptable for the Russian Federation. In exchange for what Lavrov described as their voices being heard, do you fully grasp the gravity of what has just transpired or what is happening? Currently, we're discussing the strong possibility that by this coming weekend, we could realistically see a fully developed and solidified peace plan taking shape. The president today referred to it as a draft, indicating that while it's a well-articulated version of the story, it remains just a preliminary draft for now, yes. And now it's just a rough copy. But by this weekend, what's needed isn't merely a draft, but a complete and agreed-upon resolution for this entire situation. Thus, by the weekend, it's highly probable that the United States and its representatives will be speaking with the Russians again. Indeed, but what could be the potential outcome of this discussion? Well, obviously, the conversation could conclude with a situation where someone ultimately agrees to something. Right now, I honestly can't definitively say whether this situation is favorable or unfavorable for Ukraine. However, it truly appears to me that at this current juncture, within this ongoing series of 28 points, which are now evolving into 20, we are logically approaching a definitive conclusion, as this will indeed mark the ultimate end. It's either all or nothing for everyone involved. And if it does conclude with a peace agreement, that will undeniably be a very disadvantageous outcome for Ukraine. But what if it all concludes with every effort to make things meet, to reconcile the differences between the United States, Europe, Kiev, and the Russian Federation, utterly crumbling and falling apart? Then the war will clearly carry on, but we will no longer witness these 28 points or any further efforts to bring them back to life. And that's the story. So when they say something's due by Christmas, I mean, according to the revised Julian calendar, if you celebrate on, say, December 25th, then it must indeed fall precisely on Christmas Day itself. There's absolutely no more room to prolong this any further. Currently, everyone is encountering the boundaries of their current positions. And here, ABC News quotes another statement from the deputy of Russia's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Lavrov's deputy, Ryabkov, who says that they are ready for a deal. Meanwhile, Sky News is also reporting on the fact that 90% of the issues between the Russian Federation and Ukraine have already been addressed and resolved. So essentially, the crucial matter that still stands, and I will now circle back to where I originally began, is indeed the territorial question. However, it is certain to be resolved if one were to accurately and meticulously dissect the logic, the profound meaning, the underlying philosophy, the essential content, and indeed the very narrative of this particular message from Volodymyr Zelensky. Just take a screenshot of it and then read it through a few more times, perhaps even aloud. You'll come to understand that there is a very significant political causal component. This means there's a significant political cause and effect involved. Friends, is a hint that the responsibility will have to be shared. And Volodymyr Zelensky obviously doesn't want to do that alone. And if this comes as a secret to you, he has repeatedly stated that the people themselves must make the final decision. Now, it seems America is expected to decide everything and will simply present that to the people as a done deal. So there it is. There you have the 10% that, well, actually separates and distinguishes Volodymyr Zelensky from either being celebrated in glory of a warrior, a victor, a symbol of the nation. Well, which he is in some sense of the word, isn't that right? And it either opens up his political future or closes it. So yeah, what a shame.